The morning it arrived, I thought it was spam, an email with the subject line, "Wedding Contribution Final Payment Reminder." But then I saw the sender's name, Camille Whitaker, and my hands went cold before I even opened it. Inside was a neatly written note that didn't sound like my daughter at all. "Dad, Nathan and I finalized the wedding expenses. Your portion is attached. Please arrange transfer within the week. You'll understand this is the world I belong to now." Attached was a PDF, $155, $420, for the Whitaker Cross Union celebration. My name sat under a column labeled Primary Benefactor. There wasn't a greeting, not even "Love, Camille." Just a digital invoice from my own child, like I was some silent investor in her new life. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. Not angry yet, not sad either. Just hollow, the kind of emptiness you feel when you realize something precious has been slipping away for years and you never noticed until it was gone. The old kitchen clock ticked behind me, marking the seconds of a life I suddenly felt I'd wasted on hope. The sun coming through the blinds painted the table gold, same as it always did. Same table where I'd helped her with science projects, where Evelyn used to set down Sunday pancakes, where laughter once lived. Now it was just me, a laptop, and a bill for the privilege of being excluded. I scrolled through the line items. Venue, the Astoria Grand Ballroom, $47,000. Designer floral installations, $12,800. Drone coverage and cinematic highlights, $4,500. Honeymoon experience package, $26,000. And at the bottom, paid by W. Whitaker, parent of the bride, authorized guarantor. Guarantor, that word burned. I hadn't guaranteed anything. I closed the laptop, but the insult wouldn't stay shut. It crawled up my spine like electricity, the kind I used to feel when a live wire brushed too close on the factory floor. I'd built machines for 40 years. I knew how systems failed, always quietly at first, until one weak joint brought the whole thing down. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dim light of my den, the smell of engine oil still faint in my hands, even after 5 years of retirement. Evelyn's picture stared at me from the mantel, her eyes kind, knowing. She'd been gone 6 years, cancer taking her the way. Time takes everything else we try to hold on to. Looks like she found her world. "Eve," I whispered, "just forgot who built the bridge." At 2:00 a.m., I powered up my old laptop again. My mind was clear now, sharp, like it used to be when I was troubleshooting million-dollar assembly lines. I started pulling threads. The Astoria Grand Ballroom. I knew that place. I'd repaired their HVAC system once back in 2008. I remembered the manager slick as oil and twice as slippery. I checked their vendor policy, 60% deposit, non-refundable, only payable by the primary guarantor. Then came Velvet Events Coordination, the company listed on the invoice header. Their website screamed luxury rose gold logos, champagne fonts, pictures of couples who looked more like influencers than real people. But what caught my eye was the fine print. All contracts must include financial confirmation by an authorized family member for clients under 30. Camille was 28. That meant Nathan couldn't qualify without me. They hadn't just asked for my help, they'd used my name to buy credibility. I leaned back in my chair and let that truth sink its teeth in. It wasn't the money that hurt, it was the message, that I'd become a background prop in my own daughter's story. Around dawn, I brewed coffee strong enough to peel paint and called Harold Evans, my old attorney from my GM days. "Harry," I said. When he picked up, my voice steady, "What's the penalty for someone signing contracts in your name without consent?" he sighed. "Depends who did the signing. My daughter and her fiancé." A pause. "Then it's not fraud in the eyes of the law, Walt. It's family." Family, I repeated the word, tasting strange. That used to mean Sunday dinners and inside jokes. Now it felt like leverage. After I hung up, I went to my garage. The air smelled of motor oil and old steel. On the shelf sat the wooden toolbox I'd inherited from my father, his initials carved into the lid. L.W. Leonard Whitaker. He used to say, if you lend someone your tools, you're lending them your time. Make sure they return both. Maybe that's what this was about. time. All the hours I'd traded so she could stand where she was now, and she'd spent them like pennies, cheap and forgettable. By noon, I'd decided on two things. First, I would not send a dime without seeing every contract with my signature on it. Second, I would find out exactly what kind of man Nathan Cross was before another cent left my account. When the phone rang, I almost ignored it.
Unknown number.
But habit dies hard. Mr. Whitaker, a cheerful voice said. This is Valerie from Velvet Events. We're finalizing vendor schedules for the Whitaker Cross wedding. Could you confirm your preferred wire date? I took a slow breath. Preferred wire date. Yes, sir. You're listed as the primary financial contact. That word again, primary. I felt the room tilt slightly, a dull hum starting behind my eyes. Ms. Valerie, I said, calm but clipped. I haven't approved any payments. If you have documents that say otherwise, I'd like to see them, in writing. There was a beat of silence, then the careful tone people use when they realize they've stepped into a mess. Oh, I see. I'll double-check with Mr. Cross. You do that, I said and hung up. Outside, the Georgia sun was climbing high, burning the mist off the pines. I stood at the window watching the light hit the driveway where Camille used to draw hopscotch squares with chalk. I remembered her laughter echoing against the porch, her hair full of summer dust. Now all I could hear was the hum of my refrigerator and the sound of my own heartbeat slowing into something cold and deliberate. They thought they could shame me with my own generosity. They thought because I was quiet, I was weak. They thought because Evelyn was gone, I'd forgotten how to fight. But the thing about men who've spent their lives fixing broken systems is we always know where the fault lines are. I poured another cup of coffee, opened a new folder on my laptop and titled it, Operation Wire Cut. Then I smiled, small, thin, dangerous. They thought the old man had gone soft, I murmured to the empty house. They forgot who built this family dollar by dollar. I wasn't always this quiet. Once upon a time, my laugh could fill a room, my hands never stopped moving, and my world revolved around a small house on Auburn Avenue, the one I built for Evelyn back in 1984. Every beam, every nail, every wire, I put there myself. That house wasn't fancy, but it stood straight, same as I did. That's where Camille grew up, my little girl with the wide eyes and a stubborn streak that matched mine. She used to sit on my shoulders at the county fair, sticky fingers clutching cotton candy, shouting that one day she'd live in a house with stairs and chandeliers. I'd laugh and say, "Dream big, baby, but never forget who taught you to climb." Evelyn would shake her head at us both. "You two are going to turn pride into a religion," she'd say, half smiling. "Just make sure you pray for humility every now and then." I wish I'd listened harder. Back then, life was simple. I worked at General Motors plant outside Atlanta. Evelyn taught third grade at Booker Elementary, and Camille thought we were the richest people alive because her daddy fixed things other folks threw away. When the plant closed in 2002, I picked up whatever came my way, mechanic shifts, HVAC repairs, warehouse contracts. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And when Camille got into Spelman on scholarship, I damn near cried into my toolbox. Evelyn said it best that night. "She's going places, Walt. Just make sure she knows how to come back." I thought she did, until Nathan Cross happened. Nathan came into Camille's life like a polished storm, smooth, handsome, all teeth and confidence. He was everything I wasn't: soft hands, crisp suits, words that sounded like they'd been rehearsed in a mirror. The first time he came by for dinner, he brought wine I couldn't pronounce, and a smile that never touched his eyes. We sat around the table where Evelyn once laid Sunday pot roast, and Nathan talked about expanding horizons and the value of social positioning. He said it like those words were currency. Camille hung on every syllable. "So, Mr. Cross." I asked, "What exactly do you do for a living?" He smiled. "Real estate development. My firm specializes in lifestyle experiences." Lifestyle experiences, I repeated. That code for selling things people don't need but can't resist. Camille glared at me. "Dad." Nathan just laughed politely. "You could say that." That was the night I saw the shift in her eyes, the moment admiration replaced understanding. After dinner, she hugged me goodbye but lingered near the door. "Dad," she said softly, "you might not get it now, but Nathan's trying to help me build something bigger." "I thought we were already building something," I said. She smiled the way people do when they think they've outgrown your language. "You built roots, Dad. I want wings. Roots and wings. Every parent's curse to give both and watch one destroy the other." The visits got shorter after that. Calls turned into texts, texts into silence. When Evelyn got sick, Camille was finishing grad school and barely came home. I never blamed her. I told myself she was chasing a future her mother would be proud of. But Evelyn saw clearer than I did. One night, lying in her hospital bed, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't let her forget where she came from, Walt. Pride's the last thing poverty leaves behind." I nodded, promising I'd remind her, but I didn't know then how fast pride turns to shame once money enters the room. Evelyn passed the next morning at 5:14 a.m. The sunrise that day looked exactly like her, soft and golden. Camille arrived 3 hours later, late enough to miss her mother's last breath, early enough to still call it love. At the funeral, Nathan was there, immaculate in his charcoal suit. He kept one arm wrapped around Camille, the other busy shaking hands with people he didn't know. "Your daughter's exceptional," he told me afterward. "She's got your work ethic and her mother's grace." I wanted to believe him, but something in his tone felt like appraisal, like he was valuing stock. 6 months later, Camille called with excitement dripping from her voice. "Dad, Nathan and I bought a condo downtown." "How'd you afford that?" "Loans, investments, and Nathan's firm got a new backer." "You should see the view," but when I visited, the air felt heavy with pretending. Their place looked more like a showroom than a home, gray marble chrome fixtures art that didn't mean anything. Camille served wine she couldn't afford and talked about networking events like they were church. At one point, she excused herself to take a call, leaving Nathan and me alone on the balcony overlooking the city. He smiled. "She's remarkable, isn't she?" "She always has been," I said. He sipped his drink, eyes never leaving the skyline. "You did well, Mr. Whitaker. Most folks from your generation don't raise daughters who can move in these circles." "These circles," I repeated. He shrugged. "You know people who make things happen." I looked out at the city lights, thousands of little lies pretending to be stars. "I used to build the machines that powered this town," I said quietly. "Guess that doesn't count as making things happen." Nathan laughed softly, missing the insult. "It's a different kind of power now." When I drove home that night, the radio was off. I kept hearing Evelyn's voice. "Don't let her forget where she came from." By the time I pulled into my driveway, I realized I already had. The first real fracture came on the 3rd anniversary of Evelyn's death. I'd invited Camille for dinner. She arrived late, wearing perfume that smelled expensive and exhaustion that smelled like denial. Nathan didn't come work emergency. When I served her mother's chicken casserole, she pushed it around her plate like it was a childhood memory she couldn't stomach. "Dad," she said finally, "you should sell this place. Move somewhere smaller. You could get good money for the land. This land built your college degree." "Exactly," she said gently. "So maybe it's time it builds your retirement too." I stared at her across that table, the same one she'd drawn on with crayons, the one Evelyn polished every Sunday. And I knew then I hadn't lost my daughter in one day. I'd been losing her an inch at a time. When she left that night, the porch light flickered twice and went dark. Maybe just a bad bulb, maybe a sign. And when her email arrived years later, the invoice, the polite cruelty of a corporate tone, it didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the last crack in a wall that had been breaking for a long, long time. The morning after the invoice, I woke up before dawn and sat at the kitchen table staring at the steam curling off my coffee like it could tell me how everything had gone so wrong. The house was too quiet. Evelyn's laugh gone, Camille's voice gone, even the refrigerator hum sounded hollow.
That's when I decided I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I'd spent a lifetime fixing broken systems. Now I'd fix a broken truth. I opened my laptop and pulled up the invoice again. Every line was a breadcrumb, and I'd follow each one until I reached whoever thought they could sign my name and spend my dignity. 1, the Astoria Grand Ballroom. I called their finance office. A woman with a honeyed voice picked up. Yes, Mr. Whitaker, we have your deposit confirmation here, March 22nd, $25,000, paid via escrow account under your name. My name, I repeated. You sure about that? Of course. Electronic authorization with your digital signature. I don't recall giving it. Well, she said polite but detached your daughter, and Mr. Cross provided supporting ID documentation. It all checked out. Supporting ID. That meant someone had copied my driver's license. I hadn't sent that to anyone in years. 2 Velvet Events coordination.
The same logo from the invoice rose gold V with a champagne swirl. Their voicemail greeted me with a cheerful automated voice. Welcome to Velvet Events, where luxury meets legacy. Legacy. The word made me laugh bitterly. I left a message. This is Walter Whitaker. Call me back before noon. You've built a wedding on a stolen name, and that name happens to be mine. Then I made a new folder on my desktop, Camille, Fraud. Not because I planned to destroy her, but because I needed to understand how my daughter had turned our last name into collateral. By mid-morning, I had a call from Harold Evans, my old lawyer. Walt, he said, I checked those contracts. Technically, you're listed as guarantor, but not signatory. Someone used a notary ID, probably fake, to attach your signature to their digital form. So they forged me, essentially. What's my exposure? Potentially liable for damages if payments default, unless you prove the signature's unauthorized.
I leaned back, listening to the hum of old pain behind his calm voice. What happens if I just
don't pay? He chuckled softly. Then the vendors will go after your daughter and her fiancé. It'll ruin their credit and their image. I thought for a long moment. Good, let's ruin their image first. I hung up and called Renee, a friend from my GM days, who'd become a financial journalist. She'd always had a nose for trouble and the moral code of a preacher with a vendetta. Renee, I need a favor, I said. Name it. I want you to look into a man, Nathan Cross, claims to run a real estate development firm called Crossfield Enterprises. She paused. You think he's dirty? I think he's polished. And polish hides rot. Give me a day, she said. I'll dig. After hanging up, I went to the garage. The smell of oil and dust always steadied me. I ran my hand over the workbench, the scars of 40 years of labor etched into the wood. Every gouge, every burn mark told a story. That bench never lied, unlike my daughter. By evening, Renee called back. Walt, you sitting down, I am. Crossfield Enterprises is smoke and mirrors. Registered 6 months ago, their listed office is a shared workspace that's been closed for weeks. The guy's real income comes from high-interest short-term financing, wedding loans, event sponsorships, and vendor kickbacks. In English, he sells dreams and pockets the desperation. I said nothing for a while. The sun was setting outside, orange light bleeding through the blinds, dust floating like regret. Renee broke the silence. He's good at appearances, Walt. But he's broke. Probably using Camille's name and yours to look credible. So the wedding's his investment pitch. Exactly. A billboard dressed in lace. I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time. I remembered Nathan's voice the first time we met, smooth, controlled, like he was always auditioning for something bigger. I thought of Camille smiling through borrowed confidence, chasing a world that was never meant to hold her. Maybe she thought money could buy her respect. Maybe Nathan told her it could, but the truth was uglier. They'd mortgaged their souls with counterfeit ink. I poured myself a glass of bourbon neat. I hadn't touched the stuff since Evelyn passed, but tonight the burn felt honest. On the counter sat the printed invoice. I took a pen and circled every vendor name, every date, every payment. Then I drew one line across the page, thick and black, through my name. I wasn't paying for this farce. But I also wasn't walking away. Instead, I opened my laptop and created a new email chain to all listed vendors, subject notice of unauthorized financial guarantee. Walter L. Whitaker, message. This is formal notice that I have not authorized, signed, or consented to any financial obligation related to the Whitaker Cross wedding. Any documents bearing my signature are fraudulent. Until legal verification, all payment holds should be frozen. You continue at your own risk. Then I hit send all. 10 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. Vendors calling, panicking, bargaining. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened a blank notebook and wrote across the first page, Operation Wire Cut 1. 1. Collect every forged document. 2. Track Nathan's company assets. 3. Confront Camille after truth is undeniable. 4. Teach them both that legacy can't be forged. I set the pen down and exhaled slowly. Evelyn used to say, you can't save people from the storms they choose. Maybe she was right. But she never said you had to let them destroy your house in the process. That night before going to bed, I looked out at the quiet street. A car drove past young couple, laughing, music spilling from their windows. Life moved on, careless as always. I thought of Camille somewhere out there planning her perfect day, too blind to see that the foundation was made of paper and pride. I wasn't going to destroy her wedding. I was going to let her wedding destroy itself, one lie at a time. And when the dust cleared, she'd see exactly what kind of man she'd chosen and what kind of father she'd underestimated. If they were producing a show, I whispered into the dark, then I was about to become their uncredited director. He arrived 2 days later unannounced, but not unexpected. Nathan Cross had the kind of punctual arrogance you could set a clock by. I was fixing the loose hinge on the back porch door when his black Mercedes slid into my gravel driveway, its tires crunching like teeth grinding. Out stepped Nathan, dressed in a navy suit too sharp for a weekday afternoon, and beside him Camille, my daughter, looking every bit like a stranger who'd borrowed her mother's face.
They walked toward me with the easy confidence of people who believed they were in control. I didn't move.
I let them come to me. Dad, Camille said, her voice bright but brittle. We were just in the neighborhood. I cut her off. You live 40 minutes from here. Her smile faltered. Nathan extended his hand, polished nails, firm grip that lasted half a second too long. Mr. Whitaker. Always a pleasure. Can't say the same, son. He laughed, a rehearsed chuckle meant to sound humble. Straight to business, I respect that. Look, we wanted to clear up any confusion about the wedding arrangements. Camille told me you had some concerns. Concerns, I said. That's a polite word for forgery. Nathan's expression didn't twitch. There's been a misunderstanding. The vendors required a family guarantor, and since the Whitaker name carries weight, Camille thought I interrupted that stealing her father's signature would make her look more legitimate. Did I get that right? Camille's eyes glistened. Dad, it wasn't like that. Nathan explained everything. It's just how these high-end events work now. The contracts are complicated. Complicated, I repeated. Sweetheart, it's called lying. Nathan stepped forward, lowering his tone to something halfway between charm and threat. Mr. Whitaker, I know you come from a generation that believes in paperwork and handshakes, but the world's evolved. Things move faster now. Appearances matter. I stared at him for a long time. Appearances? You mean the kind that comes with interest rates? He smiled, not missing a beat. You could see it that way, or you could see it as an investment in family unity. This wedding isn't just a celebration, it's a platform. The guest list includes investors, business leaders, even a state representative. This event could elevate the Whitaker name. The Whitaker name doesn't need elevation, I said, voice low. It's been standing tall since my grandfather laid railroads with his bare hands. Camille touched my arm, a plea more than a gesture. Dad, please. Nathan's trying to help. He's building something bigger, and I want to be part of it. You always told me to dream beyond what's comfortable. I said dream beyond comfort, I said quietly, not conscience. For a moment, the only sound was the wind pushing against the porch screen. Nathan's mask slipped just enough for me to see the steel underneath. Mr. Whitaker, he said evenly, no one's trying to take advantage of you, but if this payment becomes a problem, the vendors could pull out. Imagine how that would look at canceled wedding headlines about financial issues. It wouldn't be good for anyone's reputation, including yours. There it was, the threat wrapped in etiquette. I'd met his kind before, men who thought decency was weakness, that silence meant surrender. I stepped closer, close enough for him to see the grease stains that never quite left my hands, no matter how many times I washed them. "You know, son," I said softly. "You talk about reputation like it's armor, but the thing about armor, it's heavy, and when the water starts rising, it's the first thing that drags a man under." Nathan's jaw tightened. Camille looked between us, eyes wide, her confidence cracking. "Dad, stop it, please." "No," I said, my voice cutting through her panic. "You need to hear this. You think love is built on showrooms and headlines. You think a man who hides debt behind charm is the foundation for your future. You're building your life on quicksand." Camille's voice broke. "You're judging him without knowing him." I turned to Nathan. "Fine. Tell me, Nathan, how's Crossfield Enterprises doing, still headquartered in that shared office on Peachtree that closed last month?" That did it. The color drained from his face only for a second, but I caught it.
How did you? He started.
"Doesn't matter," I said. "Renee sends her regards." Nathan forced a laugh. "So you've been digging into my business. That's disappointing." I smiled. Disappointment builds character. Maybe you'll learn something. He straightened his cuffs. "You don't understand the game we're playing, Mr. Whitaker. The world runs on image now. Money's not real, belief is. If people believe you have it, doors open. And once you're inside, that belief becomes reality. I studied him the way I used to study broken machines, looking for the fault line." "Belief," I said. "That's what con men sell when they've run out of truth." Camille turned away, tears tracing her makeup. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping." I took a step back, the anger cooling into something far sharper. "You're right. Talking won't help. The next time either of you use my name on a piece of paper, I'll treat it like any other theft, family or not."
Nathan opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "Save it. You don't have to explain. You've already said enough." He gave me a thin smile. "You can't stop this wedding, Mr. Whitaker." I met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "I don't have to. You're doing that yourself." He turned to leave, Camille following reluctantly, her shoulders shaking. Before she got into the car, she looked back at me, eyes full of something between defiance and despair. "You're making a mistake, Dad. Nathan's the future." Maybe I said softly, but I've lived long enough to know the future isn't always progress. The Mercedes backed down the drive, its reflection warping across the puddles from last night's rain. I stood there long after they were gone, the silence pressing in, heavy and old. Inside, I poured another coffee and sat at the table where Evelyn's photo still watched from the mantel. "They're building a kingdom on fog, Eve," I whispered. "And they think it's marble." Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Renee: "Found something. Call ASAP. Nathan's in deep." I stared at the screen, the air thick as before a storm. I didn't know it yet, but that text was the first crack in Nathan's perfect mirror, the start of the collapse he'd built with borrowed dreams and stolen names. "My daughter wasn't marrying a man," I said aloud to the empty house. "She was marrying an escape plan." That night I barely slept. The clock on the wall ticked like an old enemy, reminding me I was running out of time. At 2:47 a.m., I gave up pretending and brewed another pot of coffee. Evelyn's photograph glimmered in the lamplight, her smile too kind for the war I was about to start. Renee's message still glowed on my phone. "Nathan's in deep. Call me first thing." I didn't wait until morning. She picked up on the first ring, voice low, urgent. "Walt, he's not just broke, he's drowning. Crossfield Enterprises isn't a real company, it's a shell. He's been borrowing from private lenders to cover previous loans. Classic pyramid financing. And get this, he's using the upcoming wedding as collateral for his next credit extension. Collateral. He told investors he had a guaranteed family guarantor, you. He used your name to secure $80,000 in bridge funding." I felt the words land heavy, each one like a hammer blow. "So I'm the bait in his trap." "Exactly.
And if that money disappears, and it will, you'll be the one creditors call first. For a long time, all I could hear was the whir of the refrigerator. Then I said, he picked the wrong old man to steal from. By sunrise, I'd moved from shock to strategy. I laid everything out on the table, copies of the invoices, vendor lists, screenshots, even the forged signatures. Every piece of paper was a tile in the mosaic of betrayal. My plan was simple: expose Nathan before he could bury Camille with him. First call was to Harold Evans, my lawyer. Harold, I said, draw up a cease and desist order. Anyone using my name for financial representation gets served. Already drafting it, he said. But Walt, this won't make you popular with your daughter. Wasn't trying for popularity. Next, I called Renee again. Can you get me proof bank transfers, loan documents, something tangible? She exhaled. I can get you enough to burn him, but it'll take a few hours. You sure you want to light this fuse? I'm sure, I said. Sometimes the only way to teach a liar is to make the truth expensive. By noon, my phone rang. It was Camille. Dad, she said cautiously, Nathan told me you've been interfering. You froze the payments. Vendors are threatening to cancel everything. I'm not interfering, I said. I'm preventing a felony. Her voice cracked. You don't understand. This wedding means everything. Nathan's reputation, I barked. Sweetheart, his reputation is made of glue and glitter. You just can't see the cracks yet. Why are you always so suspicious of him? She snapped. He believes in me. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. Believing in you means standing beside you, not standing on your father's credit score. Dad, please, she said, her tone softening. If we lose the venue, everyone will talk. It'll be humiliating. Better humiliated than bankrupt. There was a pause. You're choosing pride over family. No, I said quietly. I'm choosing integrity over fraud. She hung up. That evening, a courier arrived with a thick envelope. No return address. Inside, copies of financial statements, wiring records, and one letter on Crossfield Enterprises letterhead. Renee's doing. I read every line. Each document screamed the same truth. Nathan had mortgaged a fantasy on my name. Fake signatures, falsified documents, and an application for Whitaker Family Investment Trust filed without my knowledge. My jaw clenched. Evelyn's voice echoed in my mind. Don't let her forget where she came from. So I decided to remind her. I called Nathan directly. He answered on the third ring, all silk and swagger. Mr. Whitaker. I assume this is about the vendors again. Close, I said. This is about your loans. The ones tied to my name. A pause just long enough to confirm he knew I knew. He recovered quickly. You've been misinformed. Those are just pre-approval documents. No funds were drawn. I smiled to myself. Funny, because the lender's statement says otherwise. 80 grand wired into an account ending in 2947. Yours. His tone hardened. You've been digging into private business affairs, old man. That's illegal. Forging a signature's illegal, I said. Investigating isn't. He exhaled through his teeth, then his voice turned smooth again. Let's be pragmatic. You don't want a scandal, and neither do I. Withdraw your complaints, and I'll ensure the money's returned before anyone asks questions. I don't negotiate with thieves. Careful, he said, you could cost your daughter her future. No, I said, you already did, and I hung up. By morning, the machine began to collapse. Velvet Events froze their contract, citing financial discrepancies. Premier Catering demanded verification from the listed guarantor. Harborview Estate announced that until deposits cleared, the date would be released to their wait list. The dominoes fell exactly as I'd planned. Camille showed up at my house that afternoon, eyes, red hair, disheveled, no makeup, no shield. They're canceling everything, she whispered. Nathan says you started this. He says you're trying to destroy him. Sweetheart, I said gently. I didn't destroy him. I just turned the lights on. She dropped onto the couch, hands trembling. I don't understand. He showed me documents, investors' plans. He said it was all secure. I slid the folder across the table, then read this. And when you're done, tell me if you still think he's your future. She flipped through the pages, loan agreements, my forged signature wire transfers with Nathan's account number in black and white. Her breathing grew uneven. He said these were just projections. Projections don't end up in offshore accounts. Camille closed the folder and covered her face. Oh God, what have I done? You trusted the wrong man, I said softly. That's not sin. That's education. For a long moment, the only sound was her quiet sobbing and the ticking clock. Then she whispered, he said you'd never understand his vision. I understand perfectly, I said. He sold you a version of yourself that never existed. Her voice was small. What do I do? You cut your losses, I said. You call the vendors, cancel what's left, and tell the truth. You start from zero and rebuild clean. She nodded slowly. And Nathan? I looked out the window. The rain had started again, steady cleansing. Let the storm handle him. The next day, Renee called with an update. Walt, you might want to sit for this one. Crossfield Enterprises filed for bankruptcy this morning. Creditors are swarming. I exhaled. Good. You did it, she said softly. You pulled the plug before he could drown her. Yeah, I said, but it still feels like drowning.
That evening, Camille came by again, eyes swollen but steady this time. He's gone, she said simply, packed a bag and disappeared. Left me a voicemail saying he'd make it right someday. You'll make it right yourself, I told her. That's the only kind of right that lasts. She looked at me for a long moment. How can you even look at me after everything I've done? Because I see who you were before all this, I said. And I know she's still in there waiting to come home. She broke then, not the dramatic kind of tears, but the quiet, exhausted kind that mean a person's starting to heal. I let her cry. I didn't try to fix it. Sometimes silence is the only mercy left. Later that night, I sat on the porch with my bourbon listening to the storm roll over the valley. Somewhere downtown, Nathan's empire of borrowed money was collapsing in real time, and somewhere inside my daughter was finally learning that love and leverage don't belong in the same sentence. Evelyn's voice drifted through my memory again. You can't stop the storm, Walt, but you can teach her how to stand in the rain. I raised my glass to the dark, to my wife's ghost, to the quiet ruin that had become redemption. Lesson delivered, Eve, I murmured. Now let's see if it sticks. The Monday after Nathan vanished, the air in Charlotte felt heavier, like the city itself was holding its breath. Autumn had settled for good damp leaves on the porch. Cold wind sneaking through the cracks in the window frame, the smell of change whether you wanted it or not. Camille stayed with me that week. She didn't ask, she just arrived with a duffel bag, a box of unopened wedding invitations, and eyes that had forgotten how to sparkle. She slept in her old room, same paint, same bedspread, the one with tiny yellow flowers Evelyn picked when Camille was 12. Every night I'd hear her moving restlessly upstairs. The creak of the floorboards was a metronome of guilt. I didn't knock. Some lessons only stick if you sit alone with them long enough. On Wednesday morning, she came down to breakfast wearing one of my old sweatshirts. The sleeves swallowed her hands. Dad, she said quietly, how do you live with yourself after everything collapses? I looked up from my coffee. You don't live with it. You rebuild from it. Brick by brick, truth by truth. She nodded but didn't speak, just sat there staring at her untouched toast. Later that afternoon, Renee dropped by. She brought a small stack of printouts and that journalist's look of satisfaction that comes from connecting the last dots. Walt, she said, laying the papers on the table, Nathan's in deeper than we thought. The bankruptcy wasn't just for Crossfield Enterprises. He's got 3 other shells under different names, each one tied to short-term loans and fake investors. Camille froze mid-step in the kitchen doorway. 3 other companies. Renee nodded. He used you to legitimize one, but he's been doing this for years. He preys on people who want to look rich before they are. Lavish events, brand partnerships, even a few social media influencers. He sells image loans. Jesus, I muttered.
Renee glanced at Camille, softening her tone. He's gone underground for now, but he'll resurface. Guys like him always do. The trail's clean enough to avoid prosecution, but dirty enough to keep him looking over his shoulder. Camille sat down slowly, her face pale. I thought I was helping him build something real. Renee put a hand on hers. You're not the first person to mistake ambition for love, honey. You just paid tuition for a very expensive education. That evening I found Camille in the garage sitting on my old stool, staring at the pegboard of tools like it was an art exhibit. I used to hate this place, she said. The smell of grease, the noise, how you'd stay out here for hours. It felt like you were hiding. I said simply, hiding from bills, from exhaustion, from knowing I couldn't give your mother the life she deserved. But I came out here to build things that lasted, even if they were small. She smiled weakly. I don't know how to build anything anymore. You start by fixing what's broken in front of you, I said, not what's on Instagram. Her eyes shimmered, but she nodded. Can we fix something together? I pulled a cracked wooden stool from the corner Evelyn's old plant stand broken years ago. Let's start with this. We worked in silence. The rhythm of sanding, measuring, and gluing filled the garage. For the first time in months, I felt like I had my daughter back. Not the woman chasing luxury, but the kid who once built birdhouses beside me, laughing when her nails bent sideways.
That night as we cleaned up, I asked, "What do you want to do next?" She shrugged. "Find a job, maybe move out of the apartment. I don't even know what's left in my bank account. You want me to look it over with you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I need that." We sat at the kitchen table again, her laptop open, bank statements pulled up. The numbers were bleak. Overdrafts, declined charges, vendor refunds bouncing back into the void. "Dad," she whispered, "I owe $12,000. On a credit card I didn't even know existed." I leaned in. "That card's in your name." "Yes." Nathan said it was just for emergency deposits. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "He opened it with your information, didn't he?" She nodded. "He said it was temporary, that he'd close it after the wedding." I took a deep breath. "Call the bank tomorrow. Report fraud. Every penny tied to his activity. Don't protect him. He didn't protect you." Camille looked up at me, her voice barely a whisper. I thought love meant protecting someone no matter what. Love, I said, means holding someone accountable when they start sinking you with them. The next morning the phone rang. Harold Evans again. "Walt, I've got updates. Creditors are filing civil claims against Nathan, and get this, his last known account shows a withdrawal of $42,000 the night before he vanished. Offshore transfer. He's gone for good. Good riddance." Not quite. There's still the question of your forged documents. The DA's office is reviewing them. They may need Camille's testimony to prove identity theft. I looked at my daughter, who was listening from across the table. "We'll cooperate fully," I said. After I hung up, she asked, "What if it all comes out? The papers, the story, everything." "Then it comes out," I said. "Truth can be ugly, but it's the only thing that doesn't rot." That weekend, we visited Evelyn's grave for the first time since the collapse. Camille brought lilies, her mother's favorite. She knelt beside the stone, tracing Evelyn's name with her fingers. "Mom, I made a mess," she whispered. "The kind of mess you can't hide behind smiles." I put a hand on her shoulder. She'd say the same thing she always did, that messes mean you're living. What matters is what you clean first. We stood there in silence until the sun dipped low and the cemetery lights flickered on. When we got home, Camille finally smiled, faint but real. "You know, Dad, I thought I'd be angry with you forever. But now I get it. You weren't trying to control me. You were trying to keep me from selling myself." I didn't answer right away. My throat was tight. Instead, I said, "You can't teach someone to value themselves until they've seen what happens when they don't." She nodded. "I've seen it now." That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen again, staring at the same spot where all this had begun. That stupid invoice still folded in the drawer.
I pulled it out, smoothed the creases, and wrote across the top in black ink, "Paid in lessons." Then I put it back in the drawer and closed it for good, because sometimes justice doesn't come with handcuffs or apologies. Sometimes it's just a daughter coming home broke, but wiser, ashamed, but whole, and sometimes that's enough. 3 weeks later, the storm that began inside our little kitchen spilled into the world. By then, Camille had found a new rhythm: coffee at dawn, job applications by noon, quiet dinners with me at 6. Her voice was calmer, her laughter slower, like she was relearning how to be real. I was beginning to think we'd made it through the worst. Then the article hit. Renee called at 7:15 that morning. "Walt, brace yourself. Charlotte Ledger just published an exposé, The Crossfield Collapse, the wedding scam that fooled uptown." It's trending already. I opened my laptop and there it was, Nathan's face plastered on the screen, that too perfect smile finally weaponized against him. The headline photo showed him and Camille from a charity gala 6 months earlier, her arm looped around his, both of them radiant, but the caption underneath turned my stomach. New evidence suggests that Crossfield Enterprises and its investors were part of a web of financial deception, including forged documents tied to the Whitaker family name. I scrolled down. There it was, our name. My name. My coffee turned cold in my hand. "Renee," I said quietly, "you promised discretion." "I did," she said. But once the DA started investigating, the story leaked. They had multiple sources. I made sure you and Camille were framed as victims, not accomplices. Camille came downstairs moments later, still in her robe, hair tousled. "Dad, my phone's blowing up." She froze when she saw the article open on my screen. Her eyes widened as she read, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Oh my God, he dragged my name into this." "He didn't drag it," I said softly. "He sold it." By noon, the world had opinions. Old friends called, offering sympathy laced with gossip. Strangers flooded Camille's social media with pity and judgment in equal measure. Some called her naive, others complicit. And through it all, she sat at the table like someone watching her own house burn down. At one point, she said, "I used to think reputation was something you could manage like an outfit. Now it feels like smoke, you can't hold it, and once it's gone, it doesn't come back." "Smoke clears," I told her, "but when it does, you see who's still standing." That evening, a knock came at the door. When I opened it, I found a tall man in a gray suit holding a badge. "Mr. Whitaker, Detective Samuel Ortiz, Financial Crimes Division. May I come in?" Camille stiffened behind me, but I nodded. He sat at our kitchen table, the same table where everything had started, and opened a file. "We're building a case against Nathan Cross. We've traced several shell accounts tied to your forged signature. We'll need statements from both of you to verify the documents." "Will that clear our names?" Camille asked quietly. Ortiz's tone softened. "You were victims, but the media won't care about nuance until the arrest is made." I exhaled slowly. "Then arrest him fast." Ortiz closed the folder. "We're trying. He's using multiple aliases, last spotted in Atlanta. But he'll surface. Guys like that always think they're smarter than the system." As he stood to leave, Camille asked Detective, "Do you think he ever really loved me?" Ortiz paused, his face unreadable. "Ma'am, men like Cross don't love people. They love leverage." After he left, Camille sat in silence. Then, almost to herself, she said, "Leverage. That's what I became to him." "No," I said softly. "That's what he tried to make you. There's a difference." The next day, the fallout hit our doorstep. The church where Evelyn's memorial had been held called to say reporters had shown up asking about the Whitaker family. A local talk show mentioned us by name during a segment about financial fraud. And someone, maybe one of Nathan's old associates, sent an anonymous letter that simply read, "Tell your daughter some debts don't disappear." Camille's hands shook when she read it. I took the letter, folded it once, and burned it over the sink. "Some people build their lives on threats," I said. "Don't give them rent-free space in your head." She nodded, tears forming but unshed. You really think this will end eventually? Scandals are like wildfires. They burn fast and bright, but they die just as quick when the truth runs out of oxygen.
That night, as the city buzzed online with our story, Camille did something that made me proud in a way words can't cover. She opened her laptop, logged into her social accounts, and typed a post, not a defense, not an excuse, just truth. I believed in someone who wasn't who he claimed to be. I made choices I regret, hurt people I love, and learned that money and meaning don't mix. I'm not hiding anymore. My name is Camille Whitaker, and I'm rebuilding from the ashes with honesty this time. Within an hour, thousands had liked it. Half supportive, half cruel, but for the first time in months, she didn't flinch. "You really posted that?" I asked. She nodded. "You once said dignity doesn't come from approval. It comes from facing the mirror and not looking away." "Smart woman said that," I murmured. "Yeah," she smiled faintly. She raised me.
2 days later, Renee called again. "Walt, you might want to check the Ledger's update. They're running a follow-up story tomorrow. Apparently Nathan tried to file for bankruptcy again, using fake IDs. He's been arrested in Atlanta." I turned toward Camille, who was sitting by the window, sketching in a notebook like she used to when she was little. "He's caught," I said simply. She looked up, eyes clear, no joy, but relief. "Then it's over." Almost. But endings aren't about arrests. They're about peace. The following week, Ortiz called to confirm it officially. "Mr. Whitaker, Ms. Whitaker, the evidence you provided sealed the case. He's being extradited back to North Carolina. You're in the clear." After I hung up, Camille sat quietly for a long moment, then whispered, "I thought I'd feel happier." "You will," I said, "but peace is quieter than happiness. It doesn't dance. It just stays." That Sunday, we went to church for the first time since Evelyn's funeral. The same pew, the same sunlight through stained glass. People looked, whispered, smiled awkwardly, but when the choir started singing, Camille took my hand. Her grip was steady. After the service, an older woman stopped her near the aisle. "Honey," she said, "don't let them talk you down. Everyone falls for the wrong person once. The trick is not letting that person keep you from becoming right again." Camille smiled through tears. "Thank you, ma'am. I think I'm learning that." That night, I sat on the porch alone, bourbon in hand, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. The world had seen our family broken open, but the truth had done something Nathan's lies never could. It rebuilt us. Inside, Camille was humming while cooking dinner. Not for an audience, not for a show, just because she could. I took a slow sip and let the quiet settle. The Whitaker name was back where it belonged, not on contracts, not in headlines, but in a home that had finally remembered what decency sounded like. The day it was supposed to happen arrived anyway. October 12th, the date printed in silver on the invitation still sitting in a cardboard box by Camille's bedroom door. Even after everything, part of me thought she'd want to forget it quietly. Stay home, maybe cook, maybe light a candle for closure. But that morning she came downstairs dressed in black slacks and a white blouse, simple, unadorned. Her face calm in a way that only comes after you've wept every tear you had. "I need to go," she said, "to see it end for real." I didn't ask where. I already knew. Savannah, the backup ceremony. Nathan's last desperate illusion. Renee had mentioned it in passing when the investigation first started, a private estate he'd reserved just in case. Apparently, he'd told the vendors he was planning a reimagined, more intimate affair. In other words, one last performance. We drove through the rain. The highway stretched long and gray, and every mile felt like closing a chapter that had been bleeding for too long. When we arrived, the place looked like a movie set caught mid-collapse. White tents flapped in the wind. The catering truck was parked crooked by the service entrance. A handful of guests, mostly Nathan's old investors and their restless wives, stood scattered under umbrellas, faces pinched, whispering. The smell of wet roses and champagne clung to the air, and at the center of it all, standing by the altar like nothing had gone wrong, was Nathan Cross. He saw us before we reached the gate. His posture straightened, his smile reappeared, the same performance-polished grin that had fooled everyone once. He stepped forward, rain dripping off his hair, spreading his arms as if this were some cinematic reunion. "Camille," he said, voice smooth as ever you came, "I knew you'd come. You had to see what we built." She stopped a few paces from him, her voice steady. "You didn't build anything, Nathan. You borrowed it." His eyes flicked toward me, a faint sneer breaking through the charm. "Mr. Whitaker, you must feel proud. You got what you wanted, the headlines, the humiliation, the old man's revenge." "I didn't want revenge," I said quietly. "I wanted honesty. The fact that it looks like revenge is your doing." Nathan laughed sharp and hollow. "You think you won? You destroyed your daughter's name to feel powerful for once in your life. Look around, she's standing in the ashes of everything I gave her." Camille took a step forward, the rain soaking through her blouse. "You didn't give me anything. You took what my father earned and dressed it up like generosity." He reached for her hand. "Baby, listen to me, this wedding, it can still happen. The press is gone, the heat will fade, we can start fresh. I have a new deal lined up, real money this time. We can fix this." She pulled her hand away. "No, Nathan, you can't fix rot by painting over it." He tried again, desperation cracking his perfect tone. "You're nothing without me. Don't you get it? They'll laugh at you, not me. You're the one who fell for the scam." Camille's voice shook, but not with fear, with clarity. "You're right. They'll laugh. But at least I can walk out of here free."
That was when the sirens began. 2 squad cars rolled up the driveway, red and blue lights painting the white tents in chaos. The guests scattered. Detective Ortiz stepped out, his coat pulled tight against the wind. He spotted me, nodded once, then turned to Nathan. "Nathaniel Cross," he said, voice clear. "You're under arrest for multiple counts of wire fraud, forgery, and identity theft." Nathan froze. The confidence drained out of him like air from a punctured balloon. "You can't be serious. This is a mistake. This is a misunderstanding." Ortiz held up the warrant. "We have your accounts, your transfers, your signatures, and the forged guarantor forms courtesy of your fiancé's father." Nathan's gaze snapped to me, rage flickering like a dying flame. "You old bastard," he spat. "You think you've won something? This isn't over." I stepped closer, close enough for him to see the steadiness in my eyes. "You're right. It's not over. You've still got time to figure out who you could have been." He tried to lunge, but the officers were faster. The cuffs clicked loud against the rain. As they led him away, his perfect image crumbled, the polished suit, the slick hair, the false composure. He was just a man in handcuffs now, and the world finally saw it. Camille stood motionless, watching him disappear into the police car. The rain washed her makeup clean until her face was bare and human again. She whispered, "It's really over, isn't it?" I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, the performance is done." Around us, the vendors packed up quietly. The florist gathered wilted roses, the photographer wiped water off his lenses, and someone unplugged the string lights that never got the chance to glow. The sound of thunder rolled over the empty estate like applause for an ending no one wanted, but everyone needed. Later, as we sat in the car, soaked and shivering, Camille leaned her head on my shoulder. "I spent so long chasing his world," she said. "All the parties, the dresses, the people who smiled without meaning it. And for what? For a lesson," I said softly. "The kind that hurts but lasts." She laughed bitterly. "Do you think Mom would have forgiven me? She would have done what she always did, pulled you close, then told you not to do something that stupid again." Camille smiled through tears. "Sounds like her." On the drive home, the rain slowed. The clouds began to thin streaks of gold cutting through the gray. Camille looked out the window, voice quiet. "You know what's funny? Even now, part of me wanted him to say sorry. Just once. To mean it." I gripped the wheel tighter. Some people can't say sorry because they'd have to face themselves first. He'll have a lot of time for that where he's going. She nodded slowly, her reflection in the glass, fragile but steady. Then maybe that's his real punishment. That night back home, I hung my wet coat by the door and turned on the kitchen light. The clock ticked softly, Evelyn's photograph watching from the mantel. Camille poured 2 cups of coffee and handed me one. "You didn't have to come today," she said. "I did.
I said, because closure's not something you mail. You show up and look it in the eye. She smiled faintly. I think I inherited that from you, then maybe I did something right after all. We clinked mugs lightly, steam rising between us. Outside, the rain had stopped and the world was clean again, quiet, reflective, and real. Respect doesn't echo in applause, I murmured mostly to myself. It lives in the silence that follows the truth. Camille looked at me. What was that? I shook my head. Just something your mother used to say. She didn't question it. She didn't need to. The storm had passed. The stage was empty. And for the first time in years, I felt like we were finally back home. 2 months later, winter settled in like an old truth, cold, honest, unavoidable. The chaos had burned itself out, leaving behind only the hum of ordinary life. The papers stopped calling. Reporters moved on to fresher scandals. And the Whitaker name, our name, slowly began to sound normal again. Camille found work at a nonprofit community center helping women navigate financial aid and credit recovery. Fitting, I thought. The girl who once mistook luxury for love now spent her days teaching others how to live within their means and still keep their dignity intact. Every morning she'd leave the house before sunrise, coffee in one hand, her mother's silver cross hanging around her neck. Long day, I'd ask when she came home late. Good day, she'd say. And I believed her. The house was different now, not quieter, just steadier. There were small signs of life returning, the smell of stew simmering in the kitchen, the faint hum of Camille's music upstairs, the way she started leaving notes on the fridge like she used to as a teenager. Bought milk, laundry's done, thanks for waiting up. They were small words, but they meant the world. One evening I found her sitting in the den surrounded by papers, bills, legal forms, bank statements. She was cross-referencing everything with a precision that reminded me of my old workshop days. You working or punishing yourself? I asked, leaning on the doorframe. She smiled faintly. Maybe both. I walked over and sat beside her. Let me see. Her credit card balances were down her savings account, steady, her budget neatly written in her own handwriting. No more Nathan's fingerprints anywhere. You're getting there, I said. I'm trying, she replied. It feels strange, though. Like learning to breathe without someone else's permission. That's how freedom feels, I said. Uncomfortable at first, then necessary. A few days later, she came into the kitchen holding her phone. Dad, she said, you'll never guess who reached out the ledger. They want to do a follow-up piece. They're calling it From Scandal to Second Chances. They want to interview me about recovery. I raised an eyebrow. You gonna do it? She hesitated. Part of me wants to show I'm not hiding anymore, but another part of me just wants to live without explaining. Then don't explain, I said. Just tell the truth, not to prove anything, to reclaim it. The interview went live a week later. The headline read, Camille Whitaker, The Price of Pretending and the Freedom of Starting Over. The photo showed her sitting in the community center office. No makeup, hands folded, eyes clear. She looked like Evelyn that day, strong in the quiet way. One afternoon, she asked if we could visit the Riverwalk where her mother used to feed the ducks. The air was crisp, the water steel gray, the sun low over the bridge. We walked in silence until she stopped by the railing. Dad, she said softly, I keep thinking about forgiveness. I know it's supposed to make you free, but what if it also makes you forget? I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman she'd become through fire. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, I said. It's remembering without hating. She nodded slowly. I think I'm almost there. That Christmas we decorated the house together for the first time since Evelyn's passing. Camille strung the old lights around the window frames, humming carols off key. I pulled the dusty box of ornaments from the attic, each one a little history. Evelyn's crocheted angels, Camille's paper snowflakes from 3rd grade. When we plugged in the lights, half of them flickered and died. We laughed until tears came. Guess we're not meant to be perfect, she said. Guess not, I replied. That night we invited the neighbors for cocoa, the same ones who'd whispered about us months earlier. No one mentioned the scandal. No one had to. There was warmth in the room again, Real warmth, not the kind you buy, but the kind you build. A week later, I woke to find Camille sitting at the kitchen table writing a letter. To Mom, she said when I asked. Just something I need to say out loud, even if she's not here. She read part of it aloud. You were right, Mom. Pride's the last thing poverty leaves behind, but sometimes it's the first thing love has to rebuild. I'm still rebuilding, but Dad's teaching me how. She folded the letter, tucked it in her coat pocket, and said she'd take it to the cemetery after work. When the door closed behind her, I stood there for a long while, hand resting on Evelyn's photo. You'd be proud, Eve, I whispered. She finally found her footing. That night she came home with a different light in her eyes, not joy exactly, but peace. She poured herself a glass of water and sat across from me. Dad, she said quietly, I've been thinking about something. About what? About how you handled everything. The way you didn't scream, didn't humiliate me. You just held the line. You let me fall, but you didn't let me disappear. Why? I took a long breath. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's enabling. And because your mother would have haunted me if I'd given up on you. She smiled through tears. You know, for years I thought you were small because your world was small. But now I get it. You built everything you have with your own hands. I borrowed everything I had with lies. I reached across the table, covered her hand with mine. Then stop borrowing. Start earning. She squeezed back. I am. When she went to bed, I sat there a while longer. The house quiet except for the sound of the clock ticking steadily on the wall, no longer counting down to disaster, just keeping time. I thought about Evelyn, about the years we'd spent raising a child between paychecks and hope. And I thought about Camille finally rebuilding her life on truth instead of illusion. I raised my glass of bourbon and whispered, forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a luxury only the strong can afford. The words hung in the air like prayer. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, relentless, and clean. A year passed. Not the kind of year marked by headlines or tragedy, but the slow, ordinary kind, the kind that rebuilds a life quietly, grain by grain. The scandal had faded into a cautionary tale. The neighbors had gone back to their gardens, and the Whitaker name once again meant what it always had: endurance work, and a certain kind of grace that doesn't need an audience. Camille kept her job at the community center. She became the person people called when they'd hit bottom, a voice steady enough to believe in. Sometimes I'd stop by and find her counseling a young woman drowning in debt, or an older one trying to start again after divorce. She never preached, she just listened. I'd stand in the doorway, proud and quiet, letting her words fill the room. She'd learned what no classroom could teach her, that money can build walls, but honesty builds bridges. That winter we decided to visit Evelyn's grave again. It had been a year since everything burned down, since Nathan, since the wedding that never was, since the silence that followed. We stood under a gray sky, the ground hard with frost. Camille laid down fresh lilies, brushed the snow from her mother's name, and said softly, I kept my promise, Mom. I didn't let pride be the only thing I had left. I placed a small bronze coin beside the flowers, an old keepsake from my father's days at the plant. She'd like that, I said. Camille nodded, her breath fogging in the cold air. You think she forgave me? She forgave you before you even asked, I said. Mothers always do. She smiled through tears. Then I guess I can forgive myself too. On the drive home, we stopped by a diner off the highway, a little place we used to visit when she was a kid. Same cracked vinyl booths, same smell of bacon and burnt coffee. The waitress still recognized me. Been a while, Mr. Whitaker, she said. That your girl? I smiled. Always has been. We sat by the window, sunlight spilling through the blinds. Camille stirred her coffee, watching the snow melt on the glass. Dad, she said, do you ever regret teaching me that lesson the hard way? I thought for a long moment, then shook my head. No, baby, because you learned it the way that lasts. She smiled. Guess some pain earns interest. Yeah, I said, but so does dignity. After breakfast, we drove home in comfortable silence. When we reached the house, Camille went to hang her coat, then paused by the mantel. Evelyn's photo stood there, the same gentle smile, the same light behind her eyes. Camille touched the frame. She would have liked how we turned out, she said. She would have said, "Took you long enough," I replied, and she laughed, the kind of laugh that fills the air, not the kind that performs.
That evening we had dinner by the fireplace. No guests, no cameras, no celebration. Just the two of us and the sound of logs cracking. Camille looked around the house, the worn wood floors, the patched walls, the family photos that had survived every storm. You ever think about moving, Dad, starting somewhere new? I shook my head. Everything worth building's already here. You just have to keep tending it. She smiled softly. You make it sound simple. It's not, I said, but it's honest.
After dinner, she went upstairs, and I stayed by the fire a while longer, the quiet wrapping around me like an old coat. The clock ticked steady, same as it always had. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the loss, the rebuilding, and how somehow, through all that breaking, something truer had come out of the wreckage. Evelyn used to say, "The world will test your decency more than your strength, but if you keep your decency, you'll find your strength again." I finally understood what she meant. Before bed, I sat down to write her a letter, the kind she'd never read but maybe would feel. Evelyn, it's been a long road, but she made it. Our girl learned the hard way what it costs to trade truth for comfort. And me, I learned that forgiveness isn't a gift we give others, it's a grace we give ourselves for surviving them. You were right. Pride's the last thing poverty leaves behind, but dignity, that's what we earn back once the dust settles. We're doing fine now. You'd be proud. Love, Walt. I folded the paper, slid it into the old Bible she used to keep by the window, and let the night settle. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world was still. Dignity ain't free. It's earned every time we choose truth over comfort, every time we stand when it'd be easier to bow. It's the quiet price we pay for living clean, even after the world tries to dirty you. I turned off the light, the fire still glowing faintly, and whispered into the dark, "Good night, Eve." We're home, and for the first time in a long, long while, I meant it. You know, life's funny that way. You spend half of it trying to protect your children from the same storms that shaped you, and the other half realizing they need to get rained on a little to learn what shelter really means. I used to think dignity was something folks owed you, your children, your coworkers, the world. But I learned it's something you owe yourself, especially when life starts taking things away. My daughter lost everything she thought mattered: money, status, a picture-perfect future. But in the ashes, she found herself. And as her father, I couldn't have asked for a richer ending. Because in the end, love ain't about rescuing someone. It's about standing beside them while they learn how to stand again.